Mr. Giovanni, for 5 minutes, Conservative Party. Away you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some questions for you, Professor Serafin. So, many Canadians express great concern over Justin Trudeau's censorship agenda. And Bill C63 is a piece of legislation that is part of that agenda. You've written about that bill for the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, and I'd like to ask you in particular about one of your comments, just to elaborate on it. You wrote in reference to Bill C63, it is not inconceivable that remedies might be sought against other kinds of online content distributors in an effort to have them engage in proactive censorship or otherwise set general policy with little or no democratic oversight. This possibility is certainly heightened by the way in which the existing directed remedies for anti-discrimination have been used to date. Could you elaborate on that point?
Yeah, so the main example of this is, so I talked about the EDI stuff in higher education earlier. There's also the Canada Research Chairs program, which is subject currently to a rather strict quota system. Which I think was subject to controversy like a year or two ago. And actually, that quota system is the result of a Canadian Human Rights Tribunal settlement. That was, the Human Rights Tribunal settlement essentially consecrated an agreement between the government and the plaintiffs in that human rights complaint, which had as an effect to completely overturn the entire way in which the Canada Research Chairs are awarded. So now there's a strict quota system in place because of that. So it's not inconceivable. What my suggestion was, there are some provisions in the wording of the proposed amendments, so Bill C63, that would suggest that orders against content distributors in and of themselves are off the table, but that's a question of interpretation. And it's not inconceivable in that context that there would be a possibility of an order against someone who is found to be doing more than just distributing content to proactively adopt certain measures to, for example, prevent marginalized voices as they are conceived from being censored, which would maybe mean censoring other voices instead. So those are the kinds of things that I had in mind when I was writing that.
Do you empathize with Canadians who have concern over the centralization of power and control in federal bureaucracies over what people can see, hear, and say online?
Yes. I mean, ultimately, I think that it's a question of what Parliament intended, right? Parliament can intend a broad delegation of authority to, say, the Human Rights Tribunal. It's perfectly legitimate. So I'm not one of the people who would deny the legitimacy of administrative law writ large. But that said, there are trade-offs involved. If you're going to delegate to regulation-making bodies or administrative decision-makers, then you are necessarily undercutting the sort of representative nature of the legislative process. So these decisions, like for example, the Canada Research Chairs program, going back to that, right? This is a decision that was made with no public consultation, and that turned out to be quite controversial. So the public wasn't even aware of this. In fact, I don't think most people know that how this settlement came about at all. They're not even aware of the case. So that's kind of the issue with these kinds of measures.
Yeah, I'll put forward an example to you of where someone like Justin Trudeau having so much power to decide what would be objectionable to say online could be problematic. You may recall that in 2018, it went viral that a lady in Quebec had expressed concerns over immigration policies, and Justin Trudeau called her racist. And you fast forward now to 2024, and Justin Trudeau is now admitting that those policies were bad for our country, has not called himself racist for admitting that. And it gives a very clear example of where the definition of these kind of things can be easily politicized, and why centralizing that kind of power and control in the hands of a federal government could be a problem. What would you say to that?
I mean, it's not just limited to government oversight, right? So this is a broader issue with the way that these words like racists and all the other epithets you can think of are used in like the social media context. It's completely arbitrary in a lot of cases. One day it's okay to say something, the next day it's not okay to say something. And so I would suggest that it's not even just a function of centralization in government bureaucracies, although removing the kind of public oversight creates additional risks perhaps. But just the way that these things change for no apparent reason presents, I think, significant risks to, say, banning hate speech. What counts as hate speech can change from one day to the next.
Well, I think we're low on time, but I would say that I think your testimony, your writing, I think affirms why so many Canadians are concerned about what we're seeing from Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government. And certainly with Bill C63, you raise a lot of important considerations that need to be made and speak to why Canadians are so unhappy with what's happening right now. So thank you.
Thank you.